Yeah, Professor Philip Mayer is here.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you and I can hear you well as well. Yeah.
Excellent. So I'm speaking to you from sunny London and the wonders of modern technology, hey?
Okay. Yeah. So,
Can you hear me okay?
yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay,
Please
so
lead
shall I
us.
carry on?
Yeah, you can carry on. Yeah.
Okay, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm speaking to you today from London. Hopefully you can see me okay. My topic of conversation today, I'm going to give you a brief talk, if you like, about 3 presentation theories or models. The reason of talking to you about this is for a business context to help you, or to help all of us, shall we say, to be even better communicators, So I'm going to talk to you about, as I said, I'm going to talk to you about 3 models. Model 1 is from a lady called Amy Cuddy, American professor, Amy Cuddy, and the title of her talk, or her theory, shall we say, is Fake It Till You Make It. Fake it till you make it. The second model, or second theory, comes from another American professor, Professor Michael Motley, and his theory, what we can call his model, is overcoming the fear of public speaking. Okay? And the third model, number 2, 3, is going to be talking about the Dr. Fox effect. And this was a study by 3 American academics called Ware, Naftulin, and Donnelly. Okay, so let's start with Amy Cuddy. Amy Cuddy was talking about, she's talking about basically about body language. Now, we're all very familiar with body language, but what her talk was about is how body language impacts on ourselves. We're always thinking about body language, our body language impacting on others. What Amy Cuddy was talking about is how our body language impacts on ourselves. And she was asking a couple of questions. Her questions were, do our non-verbals govern how we think and feel about ourselves? Do our bodies change our minds? So she did some interesting studies. Now, she works at a business school and she is an academic. So she thought what she would do is test her theory with some students. She tested her theory with some students. What she did is she gave them a stressful situation. She put them into an interview situation, like a mock work interview. And what she did is she talked about the, I don't know if you can see me, I'm stand up here. She talked about the power pose, you know, like Superman, Superwoman. And she talked about the power pose. And what happened was the media thought that you're supposed to stand like the power pose when you go for an interview. But that's not what she meant. What she meant is when we think powerfully in a physical way, it affects our mental condition and our behavior and our confidence. So she suggested if you go into a power pose before an interview or any pressure situation, you will be more positive, you would be more effective in your communication. Because a lot of us, if we're going to a interview or some situation, we might close up, hunch up. I don't know if you can see me. You can close up and that makes a negative effect. So she was telling people to open up. So what she did in her experiment, is she had 2 groups of students. One group prepared for their interview, all hunched up, and I'm showing you, all hunched up and sort of negative type of behavior. And the other group were much more open and positive. And what happened? What happened in the 5-minute interviews? All the students that were in the more positive group, they performed much better. So what she said is this theory, her theory was proved. So she says our bodies do change our minds, and our minds change our behavior, and our behavior changes our outcomes. Now she gives a couple of examples of her own personal life. Amy Cuddy talks about when she was 19, she was in a very bad car accident and she was thrown from the car and she woke up in a head injury clinic. And what happened was she found that her IQ had dropped 2 percentage points. And this was a big deal to her because she'd been identified as gifted as a young girl. And she was told that she would not be able to finish college. She wouldn't be able to finish college. She'd have to find something else to do with her life. But academics and studying was a big thing to her. Like all of you coming to this wonderful college in Barcelona, virtually or physically. She wanted to go to a great college like this to get a great qualification. So what she did is she worked, although they told her she couldn't do it, she didn't take no for answer. She worked hard, she worked hard, she worked hard, like you're going to when you come to this great college. She worked hard, she kept working hard, and she got through college. It took her 4 years longer than her peers, and she kept going and she kept going. And this is where she started to, then she had a mentor who believed in her. And she said, look, you can do it. You can do it. Because she came to her just before, because after graduating college, she went on to another graduate school, and she didn't feel that she could cope with it. She didn't think, she felt that she was an imposter. So her mentor said, what you do is you fake it. Fake it. Just believe in yourself. Keep doing it. Keep doing the talks. Keep doing the presentations, and you'll be okay. So she kept doing talks. Even though she didn't want to, she kept doing it. She kept doing it. She kept doing it. And she didn't feel right, but eventually she felt okay. Now, fast forward a few years when she becomes a teacher at Harvard. Now, in Harvard, when you're doing an MBA, half of the marks are on the, what's it called? Participation. And so it's very important to participate. So there was a young lady who wasn't participating very much because she was like she'd been. She was nervous. She was withdrawn. She wasn't joining in. So just the day before her big talk, she came to Amy Cuddy, and she came to her and said, look, I can't do the talk tomorrow. She said, you do it. She said, do it. Fake it till you make it. Just do it. And so she felt, and this was, Amy Cuddy said, this was the first time she realized she no longer felt an imposter. And she could realize that she felt like this young lady who was about to give the talk. And then she says, to sort of come to an end, because I want to do this, I want to talk about the other two models in a second. What she said is, it's not fake it till you make it, it's fake it till you become it. So it's not fake, it's actually self-belief in yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. You have self and belief in yourselves, then if you believe in yourselves, then other people will believe in you too. So let's talk about the second model. The second model comes from a gentleman, I mentioned his name before, Professor Michael Motley. Professor Michael Motley. Now, what he talks about the overcoming the fear of public speaking, okay? But what he talks about, which is most interesting, he talks about two ways of being. So he talks about performance orientation and communication orientation. Now, just to explain, performance orientation is all about the performance. It's all about the performance. He says, when you come to do a presentation or a speech or any sort of, say sort of presentation, when you're doing any sort of communication, maybe in business, you're doing a business pitch, sometimes you're worried about how people are going to judge you, how they're going to, you get nervous because you're worried about people assessing you and judging you, like you're in the Olympics, in the ice skating or the show jumping, where you're getting someone's going to hold up a score at the end of your speech. Is it a 9? Is it an 8? Is it a 7? But that doesn't happen in speeches. It doesn't happen in speeches. But what Motley says is when you're thinking like that in your presentations, you're thinking as a performance orientation. You're worried about your performance. And I'll explain a little bit later on where that comes from. The other orientation is about a communication orientation. And what Motley says is, when you want to give a speech, usually there's 3 reasons for a speech or any sort of presentation. One reason is to inform people, to tell people about your ideas, your theories, your research, your principles, anything. It's to give information. The second reason is to persuade people. So you might be giving a speech at the PTA or the local council, and you want to persuade people not to put that house at the bottom of your house or the bottom of your road. Or maybe you're trying to persuade someone to buy your products or your services in a business pitch. Okay. Or the third reason, Motley says, The third reason is maybe to be entertaining, to be funny, make people laugh. But the only time you would be doing that is if you're a professional speaker or if you're a comedian. So what Motley says is most of the time when we're doing business speeches or business presentations, it's usually one or two. It's either to give information or persuade people. It's not about being judged, am I a good speaker? It's about getting your message across. And what Motley says is when we focus on this idea about getting our message across, we somehow we're not so nervous anymore. We're thinking about getting our message across. Now, I've done some teaching and training in the civil service. And one of the courses I was doing was about presentation skills. And there was a young lady there who was a very experienced lady. She was young, but she'd been in a top civil service job. Civil service, in case you don't know, is working for the government. So in the UK government. So this lady was working in the education department in a very senior position. And she got nervous when she gave speeches. You know why? Because she was a little bit taller than average. And she thought when she stood up, everyone's thinking, oh, that lady, she's tall. But then when I asked the group in that class, were you thinking this? Nobody thought that. It was in her head. We have these ideas. When we're giving a speech, we think, or when we're giving a presentation, we think that guy looks, oh, he's got grey hair, or he's nervous, or she's tall, or she's fat, or she's short. But people aren't thinking that. Usually, 9 times out of 10, when people go to hear you in your business pitch or your business presentation, they're going to hear what you have to say. Now, they might, at the end of the speech, they might say, well, Philip was talking about something interesting, but I'm not going to take that on board. Or you're saying, that was interesting, I'm taking it. So it doesn't matter. You're not judging Philip, you're judging the content. And that is what Motley is talking about with the communication orientation and with performance orientation. He goes into some slight more detail. He gives some examples. I'll give you a couple of examples. Right. He says a good example of performance orientation. He went to a graduation, a bit like you might have at your college here. After you finish your degree, you'll get a graduation ceremony. Now, Motley went to a graduation ceremony in the States, and this gentleman got up, gave a great speech, apparently. He looked good, he sounded good, he had all the gestures, he was very impressive, he was wearing lovely clothes, good-looking guy, spoke very well. So after the presentation, after the speech, there was some sort of cocktail party with the parents, and Motley was talking to some of the mothers, some of the parents, and he said to them, what did you think of that guy's speech? They said it was wonderful, marvelous, he spoke so well, so clearly, everything else. So Motley then said to them, so what was the content? What was the gentleman talking about? Oh, I can't really remember. I didn't fully understand him, but it was a great presentation, wasn't it? So what Motley said was this was a performance orientation. It was a great performance. It was a great performance. Now he gives another great example. When he was a young student, about 20 years previously, there was a lady that came to his class, and she had recently come to the United States, maybe 6 months previously, 1 year previously. She barely spoke any English. I think she'd come from Taiwan, somewhere like this. And she worked in the family restaurant, okay, the family restaurant, and they used chopsticks. And they used to laugh at the locals when they came into the restaurant. They didn't know how to use chopsticks. So she thought, as a gift to the class, she'd come in and explain to them all how to use chopsticks. Now, remember, this lady hardly spoke any English. She'd only recently come to the United States. So what she did is she went around the 20 students. She showed them all how to use chopsticks, but she barely spoke any English. So what Motley says, if you're giving her marks out of 10 for presentation skills, for, you know, all the things that we normally judge people on a speech, he said she'd get low marks, probably, no high marks. But if you're giving her marks on content, all those gentlemen, in fact, Motley says to this very day, he still knows how to use chopsticks from this lady. So what he said is that is a communication orientation. And I'll give you another example. Okay. If after today, I'm okay for time, aren't I? Another 10 minutes or so? I'm okay for time? Yes, okay. Yes. So if after this short presentation, ladies and gentlemen, you don't remember my name, you don't even remember I come from London, but you remember something what I talked about Motley, about performance orientation, about communication orientation, about Amy Cuddy, about the power pose, fake it till you make it. If you remember some of the content, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be happy. I don't mind if you don't remember my name or who I am and where I'm from. But I'm interested that you remember my content. And that is a successful speech. And that, ladies and gentlemen, because he also talks, I won't go into too much detail, but Motley talks about things about people worrying about hand gestures and how you use your hands, how you look at people, all this sort of stuff. He says when you're concentrating on giving a great speech, giving a great talk, you don't get worried about how you look, how you sound. You give a great presentation. He also says, what was the other thing he said? I know, yes. One thing that he did say is like things like voice intonation. When you read something on the paper, you have punctuation, you have commas, full stops, paragraphs, headings, subheadings. He said when you're giving a presentation, your voice going up and down, your hands moving around, you're speaking like this, your pauses, they're your punctuations. So that's how, and another thing he says is, what are you doing when you give a presentation? What are you doing when you give a presentation? He says three things. There's three things which are good from a communication orientation, but bad from a performance orientation. You get longer to prepare. Okay, you get longer to prepare, which makes you nervous if you're worried about the performance. But it means it's all about the content. If your content is good, presentation's easy. The other thing is, this is what's different between a presentation and an ordinary conversation. You get to talk longer than normally. When you're talking a one-to-one conversation, you get interrupted. And it's not a one-way conversation. So when you're giving a presentation, you get longer to speak. I'm asking now, do I get longer now or do I need to finish? So you get longer to speak. In performance orientation, you get nervous. Communication, you get longer to get your message across. And the third thing is, when you get to speak to a group, to a room full of people, you might get nervous because there's like 500 people looking at you. So that from a performance point of view, you get nervous. There's a lot of people looking at you. But from a communication orientation, you can get your message to 500 people in 5 minutes. And how long would it take you to get around those 500 people and give a 5-minute conversation? That is the advantage of presentations. So if you stay natural, stay positive, concentrate on content, you'll be fine. Now, I'm just going to talk about one more model, ladies and gentlemen. The other model is the Dr. Fox effect. Now, I'm going to tell you in a minute, when I come to the end, I'm going to tell you which one I prefer. The Dr. Fox effect. This comes from, you're laughing, it's good to see you smiling. So the Dr. Fox effect, this comes from a guy called Michael Fox. He was an American actor, not the small guy in the West Wing. There was another guy, he was in Star Trek or Star Wars. He was a famous actor. You can look him up on YouTube, look him up on Google. What he did, and this was an experiment done by John Ware, Donald Nuftulin, and Frank Donnelly in 1970. What they did is that's why it's called Dr. Fox effect. They got Michael Fox, who was an actor, didn't know anything about medicine. They got him to pose as Dr. Myron Fox. They put him in front of an expert audience. They were all full of PhDs, medical professionals, medical doctors, and he gave a speech which was rubbish. All the content was rubbish, but, ladies and gentlemen, he was a professional actor. He gave a very good delivery. He got very good feedback. They loved his speech. They loved his speech because he was very convincing. He was a great actor. So it got known as the Dr. Fox effect. So people so I know it's a bit of a dichotomy because I said before it's about the content. Now I'm saying it's about the presentation. And then Amy Cuddy says it's about how we believe in ourselves. So you might ask me, which one do I prefer? What do you think? What do you think?
The first one?
Sorry, the first one?
Yeah, the first one.
The second one. The second one. I prefer Motley, and I prefer the communication orientation. When I'm speaking academically, if I'm speaking, because I do training, executive training as well as teaching, I want you to get the message. I'm not worried about if you give me a 7 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 for my presentation skills or for my ability to talk to you. I'm worried that you listen to me, that you not listen to me, that you get the content. And if you're getting the content, ladies and gentlemen, you're getting something from the presentation. You're getting something from the talk. And remember, I said it before, when you're giving a talk, a business pitch, a presentation, it is your opportunity to get your message across to many people, So that is your opportunity. So you should enjoy that opportunity. I could talk a bit more, but is there any way of asking me questions, or do you just want me to come to a close soon?
No, we do not have right now any question answer session. It's the next session. Yeah.
Do you want me to keep going for another couple of minutes, or not?
Yes, you can keep going for.
Okay, so I'll just remind you what I talked about. So I talked about Amy Cuddy, fake it till you make it. She talks about the power pose. She says that our body influences our mind. So we have positive thoughts physically. It impacts on us emotionally. And I believe in her because I'll be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, when I first saw her video, I wasn't very convinced, but I watched it again and I realized that she's talking about her own personal experience. And she's a very powerful and personable speaker. So I think there's aspects of Amy Cuddy that you can take on board. If you believe in yourselves, people will believe in you. It's not if. When you believe in yourselves, people will believe in you. So it's not fake it till you make it, fake it till you become it. The more you do, the more you speaking. Take every opportunity to do a speech. Take every opportunity to do a performance, and you will be fine. And remember, there's another thing that Motley talked about, just come to my mind. When you're in an audience, when you're watching someone speaking, are you waiting for him or her to trip up? Not really, because that's what's in your head when you're a presenter. You think they're waiting for me to make a mistake, but they're not. They're listening to you. And if they're not, so what? That's their loss, not your loss. It doesn't matter. So again, going back to Motley talked about performance orientation and communication orientation, two types of way that we can be as a speaker. Are we worried about how people think about how we look and how we sound, or are we interested in getting our content across? And I would suggest communication orientation. And also what he talks about from the points of view of nerves, we get less nervous because we're concentrating on the content. We're concentrating and we're not worried about the audience. He does talk about eye contact. He does say when you don't keep looking at one person, you look around the audience. When you're having a one-to-one conversation with someone, you're only looking at them 60% of the time, 60. So when you're doing a speech, it doesn't matter if you're not looking at anyone, as long as looks like you're looking at the audience. And remember, you speak with the audience, not to the audience. Sometimes, have you ever been in a presentation or a speech where there's 500 people in the room and you feel like he or she's speaking to you directly? Maybe you feel like that now, I don't know. But sometimes you have another speech where there's only 20 people in the room and you don't think the guy or the girl is talking to you. He's somewhere else in his head because he's trying to memorize what he's doing. So Motley also says, don't try to memorize it. Use your own words. Be natural, because you've got to use your natural instincts of your gestures, your punctuation, your tone going up and down, all these natural things, they come to you naturally. So enjoy it. That's what Motley talks about. And the last one is Fox effects, Dr. Fox effect. There is a certain amount of performance and acting in a presentation or in a teaching situation or in a business presentation. But what I would say is, if you're well prepared, ladies and gentlemen, if you're well prepared, you know your content, you're pitching your product, your service, you know your product and service very well, you know your business model, you will be fine. Because that's what they're here to hear about. They're not going to give you a 7 out of 10 for a presentation skills. If it's a banker going to park his hard-earned cash or her hard-earned cash, do you think they care about your presentation skills? They care about you, your product and service. Is that something I can get involved in? Is that something getting involved in? Ladies and gentlemen, I feel like I've come to a natural close. Yeah. Is that okay now?
Yes, perfect. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, I hope to be doing some more talks at the school. So please join. Enjoy the rest of the rest of today. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for sharing your theories. I'll just pick some from your theories. Yeah.
One last thing. I think I've sent some slides to Ankit, so I think there might be slides available if people want to know more about what because I've given video links on those
Yes,
slides.
definitely,
So you
definitely.
can see the videos to get more information about these,
It is
about
in process.
these talks. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Good day.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye from London.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.